So welcome back to another episode of the Tech Marketing Podcast. I'm joined here by Kate Rodgers, Brand Media Director at GE Healthcare. GE Healthcare, like GE is a big brand that we've all heard of. Even us Brits over the other side of the Atlantic, we know General Electric. But you've recently been going through this spin-off activity. Like, tell me what's happened.
So January 2023, GE Healthcare was the first of 3 companies to spin off of General Electric. So we were the first to go. And all of this involved a rebrand for each of the companies so that they could each own their unique identity, their new brand, but we're all connected by the monogram and obviously the heritage. So Vernova, the energy business, GE Vernova, and GE Aerospace just spun about like 2 months ago. So we are officially 3 independent companies, 3 independent brands. And I will say it is not for the faint of heart to spin a company, especially for a legacy brand, but it's been a lot of fun. We learned a ton along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So are you completely independent companies now?
We are like independent stock tickers, independent executive teams, independent brands.
So you have no need to go back to group or back to the mothership to say, hey, we'd like to make this change now. That's it there.
No, we do. We are a licensee of the GE brand. Like you've probably seen GE like appliances or lighting. They're also licensees of the GE brand that had been spun out many years ago. And that is our connection. So we still do meet with the GE corporate team about once a quarter. And we do that as a process of like brand governance to make sure that we're taking care of the brand, right? We like spent so much time building this beloved brand. How do we make sure that we take care of it in the future and it's connected? So it's, just a little quarterly check-in, and it's a nice connection point, but we definitely all use like phone a friends all the time. So like we do talk to each other from the different businesses just because it's a unique thing, like a big spinoff, and not everyone kind of, has experienced something like that. So it's sometimes a sanity check, but also sometimes, advice or how did you do this?
I think the only equivalent we've probably got in the UK is like Virgin. If you think about it, like Branson's brands, in the sense of they're all licensed, but quite different industries. Yeah. So I get that's the kind of comparison I'm thinking is someone's got to be a steward of that central brand.
Yes.
And you've got to be a steward of not doing anything you're not supposed to.
Yep.
So what are some of the challenges you faced when going through that spin-off?
Yeah, I think balancing everything, right? So we had always really relied on GE Corporate for our brand air cover. And now we have this opportunity to be a unique healthcare company, but also how do you balance the old with the new? We don't want to be talking about our heritage all the time, right? We want to be a new organization that's modern, but also keep that. So it was a little bit of a balancing act. I would say that was one of our biggest challenges. And then really getting our stakeholders bought in, right? So we didn't know how to do this. We had to build a brand team. We had to build brand governance. The executive team didn't know how to do it, right? And we had to bring them along for the journey and keep them really engaged and excited. And that was no small feat by any means. But I do think, looking back, we're really happy with how everything turned out. Of course, we would do a couple things different, but it was a wild and really rewarding ride.
Like, I'm going to be a little cynical here, right?
Yeah.
Like the brand itself, it's the GE logo, which we all know with healthcare on the end. Like, what's changed from how it was before? Like, what is different?
Absolutely. So beyond, the first is like the visual. So we have a new color palette that we uniquely had selected because healthcare is like the blue sea of sameness, right? So we really leaned into this purple and colors that you would find in like a natural healthcare environment. And that really plays so well with that like human that we're pulling through as a new standalone brand. So that has been one of the most important changes to the brand is like how we talk about ourselves, how we talk to our customers, and they're clinicians. These are people that are caring for really, for sick people. They're trying to keep people healthy. How do we speak uniquely to them versus the GE brand was always trying to speak to a large, wide audience? Now we have an opportunity to become a uniquely healthcare brand. And I think that's what's so exciting. That's what we've really tried to own, far beyond just how we look, and how our ads look and the copy and things like that. how do we make it feel different and use that as an opportunity to differentiate from all the rest of the competitors.
How long ago did you spin out?
A year and a half ago.
So what's your memory of like when that difference started to manifest itself?
Yeah. I would say when we first actually got to see the purple, like when we got to see the brand applied, I think it switched things for everyone. And it was just, it felt different and the excitement was there. And that was kind of the moment for us. And what was great was it was very intentional, but we brought together 200 of our top leaders from the company, put them in a room, and we walked them through, here's the new brand, here's our new purpose, here's how we're going to go to market. And the excitement was just like busting from the seams. And it was the perfect time to introduce the brand. And then we had 200 brand advocates that we could then send out into the world, into the field, as we continue to do our work. But that was about 4 months before the actual launch. So it was quite a ways before we actually even hit the finish line, so to speak.
So I think that internal advocacy is incredibly important.
Yeah.
Like for you, which is the most exciting bit, going out to market publicly or actually just seeing the energy internally?
Yeah, that's such a hard question. That's not even fair. Like, I will say there is nothing, we have the best people in the whole world. Like, these people are so dedicated to building amazing healthcare equipment for patients, and watching them feel so proud and feel like they were reflected in the brand. And we actually incorporated them in our first commercial spot. We had 2 employees. We included them in the creative. We put some of them in Times Square during the bell ringing. We invited actual employees to help us ring the bell instead of 50 executives. And I think that really differentiated it to say, we're all part of this, right? It's not just like Kate in marketing who just put this brand thing out. Obviously, I love to see my work. We love to see the work out in the wild. And it's really exciting because we hadn't seen it in the wild before, but it was always just GE. Now how it looks like, how it feels just uniquely us, I think there's a lot of pride and ownership. But our employees, like, even if they see a billboard, they're like posting it on LinkedIn. That's not how a billboard works. Like, you're not supposed to take a picture and then post it. But it's like them next to the billboard, and they're so excited. And that's the stuff that like motivates me. I love that.
Yeah, I think that's we've talked a lot in the last actually few guests on today about purpose and like finding your why. And so I'm the same. Like, we've got cameras around us now. Like this, I have something about growing something, making it, having a team around me that now have jobs because of the effort that we put in. And so hearing your why there is incredibly, it's incredibly inspiring to hear.
Yeah, it's what inspires people to do really great work. And then those people love your brand. Like, I really want every single person that works for us to love the brand. And so many of them face our customers. They're helping our customers. If they love the brand and respect it and value it, they're going to take good care of it. And they're going to make sure that we always deliver for our customers. And that's just good business, right? And I think it's one of those things where it doesn't have to be like just your purpose, feel good, fluffy stuff, or just business, right? They can really work together to work and drive your business forward.
So, but let's come back to that word purpose, because that's something that speaks to me a lot. I think it's important for every brand to have a purpose that people can get behind. You mentioned you had to redefine GE's. Like, how did you go about that process?
I know, yeah. So we started with a lot of research. So we did 3 different studies, 3 different pieces of market research. We really wanted to understand what the trust was in the brand, what we were doing well, what we needed to work on. And that took the span over like probably 4 months. And we also did a lot of surveys, even internally, surveys to new audiences that we hadn't talked to before. So like investors, analysts, we just didn't have to worry about it, right? So that was a big piece. We get all the data together, we find our white space, and then we start kind of pulling together what we are seeing coming through. We actually involved the executive leadership team in creating that purpose.
Okay.
So that they had buy-in from the jump, right? And it had to be something that was going to work for us and drive the new business forward. And as soon as they had said it, I wasn't in the room. My wonderful boss at the time was leading this effort and, fighting the good fight in the room with the executives. And she just said it was just like it clicked, like it worked. And when it works. And now our employees use it all the time. We don't have a tagline, but they like use it as if it was one. And it's been super organic. So our purpose is to create a world where healthcare has no limits. And I think there's so many different ways that you can interpret that and make it meaningful for you. And I do think that that's why it's so powerful when we apply it.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And I've referenced this a few times today because just purpose speaks to me a lot.
Yeah.
Which is that idea of a purpose should transcend business for the next 100 years, right?
Yes. I love this. Okay, you're making me excited because I love this idea, because when we were doing some of this like research, we're thinking about it, like you think about Apple was a computer company, right? And had they made their purpose to just build really great computers, they wouldn't be what they are today. And the same thing with Microsoft. So I think your purpose has to be lofty enough that it will leave you the room to grow and aspire. It might be something that you will never reach, but is it a good North Star for your business? I think is really interesting.
But I've taken our own company through the same exercise, right? So I know exactly what you mean. I probably know some of the questions they may have asked when defining that purpose. And it's that item of like, can you see this purpose still being relevant in 100 years' time?
Yeah.
And I think that with what you've just described with GE Healthcare, like it's never going to be finished.
Yes. No, our work will never be done. And I think there's something really exciting and motivating about that too. And we talk a lot about limits. It's like opened up this whole different discussion, right? And there's different limits, whether that be like socioeconomic status in healthcare, race, gender, location, like where are you in the world? And there's just, it's like you said, it just kind of ignites this passion in our people. And that is when it's like hitting the right chord. And luckily, all the stars aligned, the research did its part, and we landed on something people really love.
I think what's really exciting about the story you just told is, you've just created a legacy that could last another 150 years.
Yeah, I've never thought about that.
Like just to put it there, like that purpose that you've been part of defining could still be here for the next person that replaces you, that replaces them, the next generation after that. Like that's something to be incredibly proud of.
Yeah, well, thank you. I hadn't thought of it, and I mean, we stood on big shoulders. GE is not a small brand, right? And Linda Boff and her team have done unbelievable work, especially in the B2B space. So I think we had good examples to work from, and we were really inspired with the opportunity to make it our own and make it, unique to us as just a healthcare company. That's what's exciting to the teams, and we've really leaned into that.
So let's move away from legacy and brand purpose, because that's an incredibly inspiring conversation. But come on to something you mentioned. Storytelling earlier. Like how do you align the brand storytelling with something like demand generation? Like how do you blend all of that together?
I love it. It should be blended together. Like it should feel natural enough. A good story will transcend just one place, right? So if we have an amazing customer story or an amazing patient story, I love when we can combine the two. You can create all sorts of materials and storylines and proof points far beyond just a brand campaign. So maybe we start with a video, some social posts, but then how do we turn that into owned articles? Can we take that clinician and make white papers? How can we really weave this thread all the way through, educate people when they're out of our, when they're not ready to buy, which for us is most of the time. But they're interacting with our products every day, and in a way that our customers are connected to their work is through patients. So brand storytelling has been an extremely powerful tool for us. And I would tell you that we were so product focused, like historically always. And then the pandemic happened and we were like, oh no, what are we going to do? Because we can't sell products right now. We had so much demand. We couldn't even meet the demand of how many products we needed, but it was just also not a time in the world as a healthcare company to be trying to sell our products, right? So we had this whole strategy that we had to throw away and essentially redefine. And we had all these marketing dollars that we had for trade shows and like in-person events, all these different things. Now what are we going to do with it, right? And what we decided to do was really lean into that storytelling angle of our people who were working on the manufacturing floor, the collaboration that we did with Ford to help produce ventilators. And it just created this like huge blooming effect. And that was one of those times where we had to pilot it because of a crisis, but it became a North Star for us way beyond that. And it was really powerful to see that, firsthand.
I mean, just how we've talked about storytelling so much, like I think there should be like a chief storytelling role.
Yeah.
Like I think it's something that is,
I love that.
That is not, it's just underutilized.
Absolutely. Or it's like testimonials. And I don't want anyone, we have enough testimonials.
No,
like,
I think testimonials downplaying it, right?
Yeah. Well, that's like when people, a lot of times will be like, I have a great client story, like, Kate, look at this story. And it's like it's like a talking head testimonial. And I'm like, you're missing the whole thing. Why did that person get into healthcare?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was because of their mom or their sister. What was it like the first time that they ran the ultrasound that they use? Was it easier? Ask them about the first time that they ever had an ultrasound machine. It definitely wasn't in color. It wasn't 3D, right? And those are the kinds of stories that really emote and connect people in a way that someone telling, I was able to scan 10 more patients today because I had the help of this, whatever. It's just different. And I agree. Everyone should have a chief storytelling officer.
I actually think it needs to go one step further than that, right? So this is something where with the advent of AI, right, we all talk around what the future could look like.
Yeah.
And I often think just no one is visualizing, no one's bringing that to life enough to say, this is where we are now heading.
Yeah.
Instead, we talk in kind of a sea of sameness. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
but I think there's like maybe it's a chief vision officer instead of storytelling officer, but I think there's something about trying to paint that vision much more cleanly.
I think, or like an innovation officer, I don't know, marketing innovation. We were just talking about creating your own roles, right?
Yeah.
So I think they could go beautifully together, right? Because there's also so many amazing things that you could do with like an AI technology to really make that story work super hard for you. We talk about sweating the assets, and that's an example of where that could apply. But I would love having someone who had the mind space to really think about what is the story and the stories that we want to tell. What do we want to move into as far as an innovation space to make ourselves modern marketers and make sure that we're not behind the 8 ball and really push the organization in that right direction, or even like a little like an idea lab or something, right? Like where they could test things out and then, either push it forward or kill it and keep it going. And that's how engineers create amazing products. Like, why as marketers can't we do the same thing?
I mean, so I completely agree. Like, I'm going to come back to the storytelling piece for a moment, though, because I'm going to ask a controversial question that you could either answer exactly as I expect you to, or it could be something very different. So bear with me.
Yeah.
Like, in a story about your brand, about GE Healthcare, like, who is the hero?
It's so hard, right? Because there's so many. We have like 3 main audiences that come to mind. Everyone will always say probably their customer, right? Their customer is the hero. We have like, if they're the hero, we have like some really strong supporting characters, and that's the patients that all of us are working for. And then that's our people. Like, our people are the ones that are really like pushing our company forward. And that is something that I have so much respect for the legacy GE brand, is they've always been really intentional about telling the story of how their people are building something bigger than themselves. And I think that's like a way for people to also connect with the brand that feels a bit more human. Maybe they don't want to connect with Kate, but they would love to connect with Mike, the guy who's been working on the manufacturing line for 40 years to make X technology that helped his mom find her cancer sooner. And those are just the different types of stories. And that's like the trifecta. When you can get all 3, then you're like, this is it. And when you know, you're like, that's it. That's good.
I'm so glad you said that, because I think so many people think, oh, well, our product needs to be the hero.
Oh, no.
And that's like the first mistake you can make.
Yes. That's how we always thought before, though. 1,000%.
I would say, when do you say that changed?
During COVID, because we couldn't do that anymore. So
interesting.
Because it was just like morally not the right thing to do as a brand, like integrity wise, we should not be pushing our products in a time where, as a healthcare company in a healthcare industry, we're in crisis. So what can we contribute to the world, to the society? That was stories about clinicians who were using novel techniques to screen COVID patients. That was employees that were doing amazing things. We had accountants being trained to work on the manufacturing line so that we could run a manufacturing line 24/7 to produce ventilators. And, had we just focused on products, we lost that whole story. And it really allowed us to continue telling our story in a time where it would have been very easy for us to just take a step back and just kind of wait for the storm to pass.
I did not realize you were retraining.
People volunteered.
That's crazy.
Like, people literally volunteered. And then we did COVID safe interviews with them. So at the time we had put an independent reporter. His name is Mikey K. He's fabulous. He's also Brit. We put him in an RV. Also, like, the RV people were like, what do you think? Where are you going? We put this guy in an RV and he drove all over the U.S. and was interviewing people for us. And we could only have one person go in anywhere. So he was, interviewing these people who had volunteered their time. They were getting paid to work on the line, which most people will never ever do in their entire life. And we had the privilege of sharing that with the world.
I think when we tend to reflect on COVID, we tend to think about it being a relatively dark time. Yeah. But I think some of the stories like that make it such a positive and inspiring time that we should all be proud that we were part of. In England, we had the same, we had some of our largest tech companies like Dyson and so on volunteer to be creating ventilators and new devices. In some ways, I think it's a shame that entrepreneurship and innovation didn't stay up. Because it was we were going out, every company was going outside of their way to try and make the world a better place.
Yes.
Yes, it turns out that we didn't need as many ventilators in the end and so on, but that didn't matter. The spirit was there to bring everyone together.
Yes, and to think differently, and I think that was the big opportunity. And honestly, I will tell you, I've never seen a marketing plan come together faster, right? We were overnight, we were well, throw all that away. And same thing, comms team, right? You really had to adapt quickly. And I think what it taught a lot of us was not to be too precious, right? So we get really precious with our marketing and this was the plan that I had and this is how I want to do it and I'm going to do this, and that. And it was kind of we had to keep things moving. We didn't have the time to obsess over one thing.
But I think there's actually there's a message there underneath this, which is we have that sunk cost fallacy of, well, I wrote this marketing plan and now I want to execute on it, instead of thinking, is this really where I should be spending my time?
Yes.
Is this the most valuable thing I can be doing today? And actually that stands out front and center there. If you had to throw away your marketing plan and start again, and it was so successful, then maybe we should be doing that more often.
Probably. Absolutely, right? And I think that's a big opportunity. And I would challenge other businesses and marketers to take a step back and look every, few years at, why are we doing the things that we're doing? And is it because we've just always done it? And that's not the right answer. And that was, we still have some of that is continued into the, post-spin world. But we do, it's actually quite interesting. It's a perfect change, early adoption curve, right? So we had the people who jumped on right from the start. And now we have we're getting kind of in the middle. And then we still have people though that are we got to do product marketing. Otherwise my job doesn't have value. And it's going to take some time to shift that. But I do think your point is a really interesting one.
Yeah, but do you think actually what you just said there, and I'm a product marketer at heart, if I was to define myself, right? Because I've built SaaS products, I know what it's like to develop them, but actually, is there have we reached the final form of what a marketing department looks like? Or actually, is there another, are we going through an evolution now that is much more focused on business outcomes and financial results and other?
I think so. I think the modern marketers will do that, right? Yeah. And they're also going to think about how they're branded. They're not going to think brand and demand, right? It's not going to be church and state anymore. It's this is how we're marketing. This is how we go to market, period, right? And I do think that's going to be a modern marketing organization is where it really falls into the entire spectrum. And what that allows us to do is then report more effectively, right? And really tie that to the outcomes being okay where we can't track everything. That's okay. And we're doing some cohort measurements to help us with that. But I do think also learning how to act like part of the business is a big part of like what modern marketers and really successful CMOs do. I had great advice from one of my mentors that I should understand the business like better than anyone else, right? And if I'm that entrenched in the business and I understand it and I understand the product, I'm going to be able to do the best marketing that I can possibly do. And it picks you out of like, you're not in your little zone, right? Not like my little brand bubble. I can really think bigger. And that opens up new opportunities that we wouldn't have because I'm just on the brand team, and that collaboration can be really powerful.
Did you like? What's your memory of one moment where you were like, this is where I changed the game in marketing?
Yeah,
you talked a couple of times about some mentors you've had. Like, can you pinpoint one moment that really stands out for you?
Yeah, I do think. I mean, there will be nothing probably ever like rebranding a company like GE Healthcare. Like ringing that bell felt like we made it across the finish line. It was like a 4-month sprint. But I will say after we had during COVID thrown everything out and we had tested this approach, a strategy that I had been pitching for years and everyone thought I was absolutely crazy. They also thought I was crazy because I said LinkedIn was going to be a main social media channel. So, but it was interesting and amazing to see that we did these storytelling stories and our CEO didn't really expect any return from them. Well, we had customers who saw them and were proactively reaching out to our sales rep and saying, I saw this on your guys' social feed. How can I get engaged? I saw that you have a touchscreen ultrasound. I didn't know that you had that. The sales rep didn't tell them. So now we have this whole new loop and clinicians would ask questions in the comments and we were able to drop them mid to lower funnel materials and resources for them to use right away. And when I saw that, I was like, this is it. This is when marketing works together. I was like, we got it. We can do this. We got it.
This is the way I'm seeing it. And tell me if this is right, Kate. That's true brand to demand, right?
Yeah.
This is where you created storytelling pieces they had no demand generation purpose. And yet there they are helping to close sales.
Yes, exactly. The salesperson was shocked himself. He sent me the video and he goes, did you make this? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, a customer just sent it to me and he just ordered a humongous order of these ultrasounds. And I was like, so I get commission, right? Yeah. No.
So, that's a really interesting point. Do you think it's time that we get incentivized as marketers?
I thought about this, right? Because I worked for a SaaS company and we were able to it's so cool because you can see the full funnel so effectively and the sales life cycle so short. So, but every time we would close one of those big deals and, they were tied and attributed to us, we were not actually getting any sort of commission off of it. But I could see in the future, if a business wants a marketing function to act like a revenue generator, I could see that being a possibility.
But you were ahead of the curve with LinkedIn, it would appear. So so let's ask that question. If we were to go one step further, B2B buyer trends are already changing, right? Yeah. They don't want to speak to sales. They want to do their own research online.
Yeah.
Do you not feel that marketers should be incentivized for driving that pipeline?
Yeah, I think if we can tell the story, we could probably make a pretty strong case for it, honestly. We work in med tech and 80% of med tech buyers reported that they don't want to talk to a sales rep at all until they're ready to buy. These are humongous, complex piece of equipment, and they don't want to talk to anyone. And you think about that, and we're carrying the football all the way down the field, and I feel like I'm just handing it over the finish line. And our sales team does amazing work, and they're the ones who build that relationship. But I do think it's a tag team approach, and I could see it happening. When I was working in software, we were producing about 40% of the revenue, and I wasn't the revenue leader, revenue ops or demand gen leader, but I would say they would have a pretty compelling case to say that they could have their team incentivized.
That's a really interesting point. So we just recently interviewed, not today, but she is here today, Lisa from Kindrel.
Okay.
And then her colleague from IBM. And they both started a pilot program of incentivizing field marketeers. Right. So it's a really early stages, but I think it's something where we are starting to see that movement that recognizes the importance of marketing as part of the customer journey.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think it's going to happen.
Actually, I mean, there could be benefits to that, because then we're thinking that will inherently give us a closer connection to the commercial team, which is a lot of the problem today. Like, I feel like we are creating a lot of our own problems because we don't spend the time understanding the commercial business and their needs. And you put marketing and commercial teams in the same room, and it's like a throwdown, right? Like, they're like, you're not using my thing.
But why are they not in? When you say commercial, are we talking sales?
Yeah, sales. Yeah.
So why are they not aligned? Like, I remember going to university nearly 20 years ago, and we were talking about sales and marketing alignment, and we're still talking about sales and marketing alignment today. Why is it?
We have different priorities. Like, I think that's really it, right? We are measured against different things, and I would say our brand and demand team are put together against each other all the time. And it's because we have different priorities. So until we all have the same priorities, we're not going to work together in that way. And respecting each other's craft, I think, is another really important piece. I love when someone from the commercial side comes to marketing, or marketing goes to commercial. That person is so valuable to us because they understand that in a way that we just don't.
Yep.
And we should spend that time always. And we try to do that. But you have to respect their craft. You know, you can't be saying like, it's just a sales team and these marketers make me PowerPoints and things like that. Like, these are really important parts of the business, and taking the time to like learn to understand instead of just being like upset because they didn't use your thing that you made.
I think you've just made a lot of marketers very angry thinking about like, we don't just make PowerPoint. I completely agree. And I think the point you've made there around actually we should see more rotation between the two teams.
Yeah.
I recently spent some time with an ex-tech salesperson on a sales call, right? And I honestly think you should, as marketers, spend more time listening to how they pitch, because the way that he put 3 brands together or 3 products and explain them to the customer, I could take straight back and put in the funnel further up the funnel, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And so I just think you should spend more time with your commercial teams.
Why not? Just go and like shadow them, right? Most of the time they're not going to care. Be a silent listener on their call. For anyone who is doing a large, has an SDR team, you can have Gong. If you've ever used that before?
But I think AI's got a big gap to fill when it comes to, you actually saw the stat today, right? I think Bob talked about it. 6.2% increase in sales productivity due to AI, right? And we are seeing tools like Gong, like Core, like Dialpad, that are helping to essentially promote marketing content as part of the sales call. So I think we are now seeing them mold together a lot more.
Exactly. Yeah. And you can understand, we would use it to understand trends and what customers were talking about, right? So the salesperson would say, what are your biggest challenges right now? Everyone wants that information. So why wouldn't we use it, right? And sit in with your sales teams if you can, and phone a friend. I'm sure someone will take you on a sales round. But I worked inside the commercial business for several years, and I wasn't a salesperson, but I supported them, and I was right alongside with them, and I learned how their business worked. And it was one of the most valuable roles I ever had, because it did give me a completely different perspective. And we were able to build that trust and that respect. And I think it just changes the conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm going to come back to the comment you made about, predicting LinkedIn's role and where it is now. What is the next trend that you are lining GE Healthcare up to take advantage of? How can I stay ahead of, if you predicted the future once, say, I'm interested to know what's coming next.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I might have just gotten lucky with that one. But I think really you're going to continue to see B2B brands, really good B2B brands. They're going to start acting more like B2C brands in the sense of how they are running campaigns, how they can get so much more strategic and smart about their demand generation activities. using them across the board. I'm going to give Workday a shout out, Eric and his team.
Yep.
Like, they crushed it. And do you know why? It's because they took that approach that most B2B companies will not, because they're in their safe bubble.
Like, I interviewed Eric last year from Workday, and I think they've done us all a favor in showing, like, this is what happens if you invest in creativity and brand properly. This is the impact it has. This is the trickle-down effect, or whatever you want to call it. Like, this is the impact it has on demand. I couldn't agree more.
So I think the more that your brand is, like, ready and willing to do that, that's going to be the future. And you know, of course, everyone's going to talk about AI, and it will make us work better. Everyone should know how to use AI tools in their business. And I really think it's that strategic thinking, that shift, that's like what's going to be really big for B2B. And I think that's exciting. Like, as someone on the inside, I think that's why it's exciting to be in B2B right now. It's like ripe for the taking, right? And you see the people take it, and Deloitte and Workday are taking those steps, and people are noticing. So it's exciting.
Yeah, completely agree. So I'm going to bring us to a close now. We could carry on talking for a while, but like, we ask this question to all of our guests on the Tech Marketing Podcast here at the ANAs. So in 5 words or less, what advice would you give a future CMO? And of course, you're heading to be a future CMO. So, like, what advice are you going to give yourself?
Yeah, I would say don't be afraid to go. We'll just make that one word big. So don't be afraid to go big. I think a lot of times we play it really small. And you can use strategy and data to help you pick the big thing. But don't be afraid to do it, and don't be afraid to push for it. You will know in your gut, your intuition, if that's the right thing to push on. But I will tell you, there is like nothing sweeter than getting to the other side and seeing it work and being so confident that it will work and making sure it works. I've put in a lot of extra hours. I'm like, this is going to land. We got to make sure it lands. And, I think that's the best advice, because I don't think CMOs are made by playing it small.
Completely agree. Kate, it's been a real pleasure having you on the Tech Marketing Podcast today.
Thank you so much.
I've loved you sharing your story. We've had a fantastic debate as well.
Yeah.
And I wish you all the best in the future at GE Healthcare.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. Really appreciate it.